Dead men tell no tales, but their ships speak volumes. Welcome to the Cursed Compass, where we explore the darkest maritime mysteries. It's May 1835. Off the northwestern tip of Tasmania sits King Island, an isolated, windswept stretch of jagged rock and unforgiving surf. Walking along this barren coastline, a local beachcomber named John Scott stumbled upon a haunting sight. 15 starving, deeply traumatized people wandering aimlessly along the shore. They were castaways. Originally, 22 of them had managed to make landfall by clinging to broken fragments of a ship's wooden deck, but 7 of that initial group didn't survive the freezing night on the beach. Their bodies gave out from extreme exposure, an agonizing process sped up by the heavy amounts of salvaged rum they drank in desperation. As Scott took the remaining 15 in, the horrifying math of the situation became clear. These shivering few were the sole survivors of a ship that had been carrying exactly 239 souls. So, what kind of disaster swallowed 224 people in a single night, leaving almost no trace behind? 4 months earlier, in January 1835, a three-masted, 327-ton barque named the Neva sat in the harbor at Cork, Ireland, refitted for government transport. The passenger list was highly specific: 150 women, 33 children, and 9 free wives traveling with 22 children of their own. Convicted of crimes often born from deep poverty, these women were prisoners sentenced to forced exile in the penal colonies of Botany Bay. Under the command of Captain Benjamin Peck and a surgeon superintendent named John Stevenson, the Neva endured a grueling months-long transit across the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. Life at sea took a heavy toll. By the time they approached the Australian coast, 3 people had died and 1 baby had been born, bringing the ship's exact head count to 239. They had crossed the entire globe. They survived the longest, most punishing open-water stretches of the journey, making the final approach the most lethal. At roughly 5 a.m. on May 13th, the Neva was pitching through the dark, heavy swells of the Bass Strait. Without warning, the wooden hull slammed violently into an uncharted reef hidden just beneath the surface. This map illustrates the fatal navigational error. Captain Peck failed to account for the strong currents pulling his ship off course. Historians generally place the strike on the Harbinger reefs to the northwest, though some evidence points to the Navarine reefs on the northeast side. Wherever it struck, the physical destruction was absolute. The 327-ton vessel rapidly snapped apart in the darkness, the freezing water flooding the lower decks instantly. Trapped below deck and realizing escape was impossible, many of the women made a devastating psychological choice. They broke into the ship's cargo holds and began drinking the stored rum. Rather than fighting a losing battle against the freezing ocean, they chose intoxication to numb their final moments. That mass resignation guaranteed there would be no coordinated evacuation. Weeks after the disaster, a passing schooner and a government cutter finally rescued the remaining 15 survivors from the island. An official government inquiry soon followed. In a highly controversial decision, the board cleared Captain Peck of all blame, despite his failure to adjust for the local currents. But the public wanted a more lurid story. In 1840, a man named John Carmichael published a pamphlet designed to cash in on the tragedy by replacing the facts with complete fiction. He renamed the ill-fated ship the Tartar, erased the female convicts entirely, and spun a gruesome, highly detailed myth about stranded sailors eventually resorting to cannibalism to survive. The pamphlet sold well. The Victorian public gladly bought a sensationalized monster myth because it was much easier to digest than the grim, systemic reality of 200 women drowning in locked holds. Strip away the ghost stories and the folklore, and you are left with 224 real people who died on that reef, cementing the Neva as Australia's second worst shipwreck. Today, their memory is preserved here at the Tasmanian Seafarers Memorial in Triabuna. The loss of the Neva represents the watery grave of an entire generation of Irish women, exiled from their homes, who drowned just miles from the shore of a new life.